This is
the Bottom Bins Podcast.
Oh, yeah! Hello and welcome back to the Bottom Bins Podcast, the very last Premier League episode to cover for the 2022-2023 season. All in all, lads, pretty good season, hasn't it been?
Yeah, it's been up and down, hasn't it? There's been a lot of shock results, a lot of predictions that we made at the start of this podcast that did not come to fruition, and do you know what? Some that did as well. So yeah, it's been an up and down season for not just the podcast but the Premier League as well.
100%.
Yeah, definitely. Like at the top with the title race, and then at the bottom, the relegation went to the last day, and then the top four race was good for a while too. Yeah, it's been a good season.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely a season to be remembered in the Premier League, and one that I'm sure on this podcast we will take and try and learn from before we make absolute predictions ever again. But anyway, lads, look, I don't think there's much point in talking about the teams that ended up at the top of the table, the Man City and the Arsenal. I think we've covered that to death, to be honest. So I think really the race for Europe is where we're going to start. So look, lads, Man United coming in third, Newcastle coming in fourth. That top four race between those two sides, and even Liverpool then in at fifth, that sort of come down to the wire as well. United only got their guaranteed Champions League qualification after the game against Chelsea. So, Oren, I'll come to you first then. Looking at that top four then, would you say that's a fair reflection on how the season has went?
Yeah, I would, especially after the first two games of the season for United. Even with Arsenal kind of capitulating towards the end there. I did actually feel the goals went really good reflection of the season. We've had some, especially now when we had so many in of Fletcher Martin and Garnacho and Sabitzer and Eriksen was out for a long while, and then even Casemiro's suspensions. Like, we had it tough this season, to tell you the truth, despite heavy investment in last summer. So expectations were high, especially in Erik ten Hag's first season, but he's delivered. I don't think anybody really expected Newcastle. I know we'll talk about Newcastle a wee bit later on, but finishing third. I think it was all the BBC pundits. I think only one of them predicted United being in the top four, so everybody's writing us off at the start of the season. Don't get me wrong, as a United fan, yes, football, but we should be competing for the league. It's where United deserve to be. So I'm not going to say I'm happy with finishing third, because it's not where United deserve to be. So hopefully we can just build upon in the next season. When the title was obviously an unrealistic possibility this year, especially it being Ten Hag's first season, but two and build upon our squad, and Ten Hag has brought to be in for a really, really good.
Yeah, and I think really Ten Hag has stamped down his authority. We've seen that through a number of incidents throughout the season. The Ronaldo incident, then Rashford being punished for being late. You could really see that this is a manager who came in and really wanted to take charge from the get-go. Connor, look, obviously, just touching on what Oren said there, how good of a job Ten Hag did, obviously, getting United to third. But I do agree with Oren, United need to be competing for titles year in, year out. Obviously, in the first year of a new manager, that's going to be quite difficult to do. But look, Connor, where do United go from here? They're obviously going to strengthen in the summer transfer window. So do you think next season he'll realistically be looking at it and going, look, we need to be challenging?
Yeah, I think it'll definitely depend on the ownership situation, how much he's going to be backed, because I think he's proven that in his first season he's came third in a season where realistically was a magnificent achievement, and he deserves to be back now, and I think he will be. Obviously, striker, need a proven striker in there. Probably need another centre back. We've seen with injuries to Varane, and obviously Martinez has got hurt now. And then improvement in midfield. I think we need somebody in there defensively. Just brings a bit more energy to the team. I think Ericsson, he did get injured. He was playing okay before that, but defensively he was getting found out a bit, especially in the big games. So I wouldn't mind improving in that position. Probably we're looking at a right back. We're getting linked to like players like Frimpong and players like that. So that could be another likely player. But I think, as Oren said, it is like United should be challenging for league titles. I do agree with that. But this season, as you guys were saying, that wasn't realistic. We came, like last season, we were a disgrace. Lost so many games in a row. We're very lucky to come sixth. Third was a really, really good season this year. I did say, even when we were going well, I thought the title was unrealistic. We're never going to. We don't have the squad for it, but hopefully next season we can improve. And Ten Hag, I seen, was only the second manager in United's history to win a trophy in his first season as well. So you got to commend him for that. So he's brought a bit of positivity back to the club, and especially after the first few games. I think he tried to play that, really good football in the first few games, and he realised, I haven't got the squad for this. I think Casemiro was a big help. He came into the team, and it's a weird season because you forget that Ronaldo was even at the club. It feels like that was so long ago. He was there. He was a disaster, really, this year. And to go from that to third place was... I know a few teams did have bad seasons like Liverpool, Chelsea, Spurs, but wasn't Ten Hag's fault. And to get 75 points in your first season is a really, really good achievement.
Yeah, agreed, lad. Agreed. And I do agree with you. I think it's going to be really interesting to see where United go in this summer and who they look to sign in the summer transfer window. So moving on then to fourth place to Newcastle. Look, obviously, Owen, a real fairy tale story for the Geordies, managing to get Champions League for the first time since 02-03. Well, I know it was only a qualification game they played in that year, but look, it's a massive achievement. Eddie Howe, really, in his first full season at the helm at Newcastle, got to the cup final against Manchester United, obviously, as well. So all in all, you would have to look at that and say incredibly successful season for Newcastle.
Yeah, fantastic. Like we've waxed lyrical about Newcastle all season, and rightly so. Eddie Howe, I always thought he was a brilliant manager, and I knew he was going to be snapped up as soon as he was sacked by Bournemouth. I still don't understand that decision. I did think at a stage that he was going to go to Celtic, but I think he'll be very, very happy that he ended up at Newcastle. Yeah, obviously everybody can say about the investment and stuff and a lot of money being pumped into the club, but like we've said it all season, this isn't a team that has necessarily spent mega money. It's not like they've went out and bought 11 new players for every single position. They've went and spent wisely. Yes, they've spent some heavy transfer fees with the likes of Isaac, but they've worked out. You pay for quality, and they haven't went out and as soon as the investment came out, they were talking about Mbappe, Neymar, Messi, anybody that of note was joining Newcastle apparently, but they didn't do that. And they went out. They've got players that Eddie Howe wanted to work for him, that New wanted to play for the badge, because Newcastle's a huge club with a lot of history. And yeah, they are where they deserve to be. But from being on the brink of relegation last season to in the Champions League next season, it's absolutely phenomenal, and credit to all them players, all the staff, and Eddie Howe himself.
Agreed, lad. Agreed. Don't think I could have put it better myself. Connor, look, I've seen a lot of pundits on Twitter, and just even pundits talking about it on TV. Look, obviously Liverpool are going to get stronger in the summer. Chelsea are inevitably going to get stronger in the summer as well. You'd like to think that if Spurs get a decent manager and they're going to be back up competing for top four again as well. So I think the question that's on everybody's lips at the minute is, can Newcastle now consistently become a Champions League football club?
Yeah, that's a good question, because obviously they're going to have more games in Europe and things like that. But the recruitment last summer especially was really, really good. So if they just invest really wisely this summer, I could easily see them being a top four team, and then eventually challenging for the league. Like, they bought Pope, Isak and Botman, and I know they got Gordon in January, but them three players have been brilliant all season. And the recruitment has been brilliant, even like in prior years. And under Eddie Howe, they're just going to improve further. It's just going to be where they're going to improve. And I think in midfield is definitely a spot where they're going to improve. I think they're going to get a new left back in. And with that improvement, like we were saying, it was just goals. If they could keep them strikers fit as well, Isak and Wilson, there's no doubt that they will challenge for top 4 again next year. As Eddie House talking as well, I think a trophy is another realistic target for him. I think here they were unlucky. They got to the League Cup final. They played actually okay. They lost to United on the day, but for Newcastle, I do think they're a step ahead of a few of these teams. Like Spurs, I think are away, to be fair, but there's a few of them odd teams like Liverpool and things like that they will improve, but they're still behind Newcastle. And I think Newcastle make a few signings and they will be a mainstay in the top 4.
Yeah, look, it's definitely going to be interesting to see. They are a massive football club. They do have the financial backing to compete with the biggest sides in the Premier League. So it is definitely going to be interesting to see what they do in the summer and how they move forward from such an incredible season, really. Well, moving it on then, lads, from the Champions League places and moving to the other European spots, Europa League and Conference League. So we have Liverpool coming in at 5th, Brighton coming in at 6th. Look, lads, really, I think we'll start with Liverpool. Obviously, a bit of a tumultuous season. Really didn't start that well, but did pick it up towards the end of the season and did win a lot of football games to their credit. A number of notable injuries this season also hampered Liverpool's squad. No point in saying otherwise. And some of the signings that they brought in the summer just haven't quite done the job that they were brought in to do. So, Oren, just on a general reflection of Liverpool's season, I mean, look, they were at their worst. At points in the season, they were 10th, 9th in the league. They've managed to pull it all the way up to 5th. They were in with a shout for Champions League football if United had dropped any more points or Newcastle had dropped any more points. So, looking on it as a whole, do you think Liverpool will be happy that they've now finished in the Europa League places, or do you still think ultimately they will look upon this season as a massive disappointment?
It's a massive disappointment, 100%. And if any Liverpool fan disagrees with that, they're stupid, to be 100% honest. This Liverpool should be competing for the league. We've seen Jurgen Klopp do it near enough since he came in. And especially if the last 3 seasons and 4 seasons are anything to go by, this is a team that's consistently competing for the league. So for them to get 5th place is a major, major setback. And to be honest, do they deserve 5th place? It's up for debate as well, because we know Liverpool can go on these long runs, but if a tactical change like switching Trent in the midfield, into a more midfield role and stuff, and different tactics involving like Diogo Jota when he came back and whatever, if that's all it took really for Liverpool to be ticking this season, then I don't know, like, why didn't they do it all season? But as I've said before, it's not a long-term fix. It worked for the moment. They're going to need to invest heavily this summer. We've seen their midfield. It's getting older. It's getting slower. And I think that obviously with players like James Milner leaving, Naby Keita leaving, and even Bobby Firmino, like that core of Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool is really starting to move away because they are getting older, and that's just a fact of it. So I think the next 2 years will be really, really crucial for Liverpool's future success, because they're going to need to invest, but they're going to need to invest in youth but experience. So they're looking at the likes of that young fella Kone in midfield, the French midfielder. They're looking at Thuram. Look, these are players that have been playing in Europe for the last few years, but they're still very, very young. Obviously, they missed out on Jude Bellingham, and I would say that they're kicking themselves for missing out on Jude Bellingham, because he did want to go to the Champions League club, and I think anybody who thinks otherwise needs to give their head a wobble, because there was Liverpool fans saying to me all season, or saying on Twitter all season, oh, it doesn't matter, like he's coming, he's got mates at Liverpool and all this here. That if you're one of the best footballers in the world, you want to be playing in the best competitions in the world, and not just playing in it, you want to be competing in it. So look, it's a write-off season for Liverpool. They've still got European football, a good standard of European football. The Europa League is good, to be honest. A good standard of European football. A trophy that they really should be looking at winning next year, which is going to be huge for team morale and momentum again, because we've said it so many times, Liverpool's a momentum-based team. So, look, it's not that there's no hope for Liverpool, because next season could be completely different. But in my opinion, they should be competing for the league next season, and they should definitely be winning the Europa League next season.
100%, lad. 100%. Look, I would say that is their overall objective. I'm sure that they will want to go out and really dominate that competition. They definitely, like, currently their squad will probably be good enough to have a long run in the Europa League. But yes, I agree with you completely, Oren, that there is serious investment that's going to be needed in the summer for Liverpool. Connor, then, just to finish up on Liverpool before we move on to the other sides, then, look, it's obvious that they're going to need to invest. They are in a bit of a rebuild phase. Well, I say a bit of a rebuild phase. They are going to be in a rebuild phase now. So, look, again, similar sort of question as Man United. Are they going to look at next season as a realistic objective to challenge for the title, or is this another process that Klopp's going to have to build a team to compete for years to come?
I think they will expect to challenge for the league next year, to be honest, because under Klopp, maybe not the first year, but since then they have been competing for the league. I seen after the game, their last game of the season, he was like, he's got that energy back and he's ready to go. And I think they will recruit, as Oren said, and I think they will recruit in midfield, maybe in centre back. And they still have a good spine there. They have a few good players. They were unbeaten in their last 11 games. Now, they weren't that impressive, but they could still get results. We've known this before. Liverpool can go on these runs. So I actually do expect them to challenge for the league next year. It's definitely going to depend on recruitment. I know they were looking at like Bellingham and all, and like that's another one that's like, I see people on Twitter like, oh, we don't need Bellingham and all this here, but they were like, as Zoran was saying, they were like all season they were saying, we're going to get Bellingham, we're going to get Bellingham. But it's obvious Bellingham's rejected them because they haven't gotten the Champions League, and they would have took him no problem, because like at the price it ends up at, like they're going to get like a McAllister in there who's going to cost 60-70 million. Bellingham's going to be 80-90 million, so there's no doubt they would have spent the money on him. But for Liverpool, it was just a write-off of a season. To get fifth from where they were at was good, but I did say in the previous podcast they were definitely the biggest underachievers. They were in the Champions League final last year. They lost out in the league by a point. They won both the cup competitions. They won for the quadruple, and from that to 0 cups, I don't even think they got to like a quarter final of a cup. Then they came fifth in the league, and let's be honest, I know at the end they did make that bit of a run at the end, but they never really were in the top 4 race. They were in it like for bits, but they needed United to slip up, and United weren't going to slip up at home. So for Liverpool, it's a write-off. Next season, I expect them to compete. I think Klopp expects them to compete. I think if they don't compete next year, I think Klopp could be on his way. And like as Salah said, it was a huge disappointment this season. He's another player that expects Champions League football. Like if they obviously recruit in the summer and don't get Champions League next year, I think Liverpool could be in serious trouble.
Yeah, look, it is definitely a situation at Liverpool that we're just going to have to wait till after the summer to see how it unfolds, and we'll probably have to wait for those first few game weeks next year to see really how they've adapted and how these players look in a Liverpool shirt. Moving on from Liverpool then, lads, and on to a side that, Jesus, I don't think we've spoken a bad word about this season. Brighton under Roberto De Zerbi. Massive achievement, obviously, getting the European football for the first ever time in the club's history. Really one of those fairy tale stories in football where this club were in the Championship, but promoted to the Premier League mainstays for the last few years, and finally they've breached that gap and they've made it into European football. Oren, would you think that, or would you agree with me in saying that De Zerbi has been the biggest catalyst to that change?
Yeah, definitely. Look, there isn't much left to say about Brighton that we haven't already said this season, so I'm going to keep it short. But whenever he came in, there was question marks. Coming from the Ukrainian league, people didn't really know who he was. I certainly didn't know who he was. And just having done such a good job under Graham Potter, I was thinking, shit, this is going to be a real setback for Brighton. But he's taken them to new levels. The players have been performing for them. They're still gonna, I think they will compete in the Europa League next year. I don't think they're just in that to play a few games. I think they're going to compete next year, but it will depend on their recruitment this year. But as we've said all season, best recruitment probably in the world. So yeah, definitely a team to watch, and they play the most exciting football in the league. We've seen that even in the Brighton and City game. It was a fantastic game of football for the neutral. So yeah, I'm really, really looking forward to seeing how Brighton do it in the next few years. It's just a question mark over whether De Zerbi stays, because he is quite known for jumping ship after 1 or 2 years. I think he'll definitely stay next year, but after that, who knows?
Yeah, and that's it. Look, if he keeps performing at this level, the big clubs do come calling, and it is hard to turn down big offers from big clubs. Agreed, or agreed. Connor, just touching again on what Owen said there about recruitment. Look, it looks as though Brighton are going to lose Caicedo and McAllister this summer. Obviously, they are two of Brighton's best players, so it's going to be very, very difficult for them. The Levi Colwill deal, it could still happen with Chelsea, but as of this current moment, it's not looking likely that he's going to be back at Brighton. It seems as though Chelsea want to take him back on a permanent basis. So, look, we've waxed lyrical about Brighton's recruitment all year and how well they get it done. But look, missing players like that next season, is it going to make things a wee bit more difficult for Brighton, or do you trust that their recruitment will get players in of a similar ilk?
I think we'll have to trust them, to be honest, because last season they lost Potter, Basuma, Trossard, obviously in January, and then they lost Cucurella, and they got in Casado, Matoma, and Estupinian, and they got top six. So to lose those players, if I had said at the start of the year, if I seen this and seen what they lost their manager and they lost 10 players, I would have said, oh, they're going to be near the relegation zone or down that, down the bottom half of the table. But then to get top six just shows how good of a manager they have, and their recruitment is unbelievable. They're already getting players in like James Milner. They're keeping players like Lallana. They want that experience. They're getting a good mix, experience and young players. We've seen them players that have come in, like obviously Ferguson and players like that who are young, and then they're getting that experience in. Good mix, good manager. Again, next season, I think they're going to be really dangerous in the Europa League for any side. If they can just keep De Zerbi next season the whole year, because I think he will be linked to big teams. If they give him the money to recruit, they're obviously going to get money for McAllister. They're going to get 60, 70 million. Casado's going to cost a fortune too. They're going to get money. They just got to recruit it right. And again, like top six isn't impossible.
Yeah, it's no, definitely not. I don't think it's impossible either, Connor. I think maybe if the recruitment's right and they spend the right amount of money on players, who knows? They could go a step further. They might challenge for a Champions League qualification. It's all up in the air. We'll just have to wait and see. Moving on then, lads, to the Conference League. Aston Villa back in European competition for the first time in a long time. Coming to you first, Oren, just on Aston Villa. Look, I know obviously you had said you didn't think Emery would be successful, and I know you were talking really about sort of domestic cup competitions and stuff when you were talking about that. You weren't necessarily talking about the Premier League, but look, you'd have to say he's come in and the job he has done is absolutely monumental at Villa Park.
Yeah, 100%. Like, this is a team that was 16th when he came in, level on points with the relegation battling teams, and he's completely shifted it around. And even in the last few weeks, he's really, really showed his grit and integrity and dedication to win. Because it has been tough for them the last few weeks, with the likes of Spurs and Brentford still sniffing about them that Europa Conference League spot. But evidently it was Unai Emery's Aston Villa that's secured it. And we've said all season he's got the players that were already there. He's got them ticking. Some players that we had written off, who look like they now might have a future at Aston Villa. And it'll be really, really interesting to see how they get on the Conference League, as we know Unai Emery, he knows how to win a European competition. So it'll be interesting to see how Aston Villa get on. I think they should be competing for that, to be honest, on the basis that West Ham were in the final of it this year. Not to take that away from West Ham or their achievements this season, but I think Aston Villa will be of a higher quality of squad and caliber manager, especially than maybe some of the other teams that are in that Europa Conference League. So yeah, credit to him, credit to the players, a massive achievement considering where they were under Steven Gerrard.
Agreed, Owen. Agreed, definitely. Huge achievement by Unai Emery. Connor, just really looking then at Villa and what they would hope to achieve next season. Look, they're obviously going to go into the market in the summer. They're going to strengthen. They have a fantastic manager in Emery. Do you think really, with the added pressure of having European football, does it derail them a wee bit, do you think? Or are you looking at Villa as a possible team that could breach that Europa League and possibly, like Brighton, challenge for Champions League next season?
I think definitely they're going to challenge, at least, they're going to come top 8 again and maybe top 6. I think they're going to invest as well. I see some of the players they're linked to, and Sensio and players like that, like top players. Emery does have that pull. He can get players in. Like, I've seen the stat, like he won 15 of his 25 games in charge in the Premier League, and they would have been, if the season started when he started, they would have been just off top 4 on goal difference. That's how good he done.
Yeah.
He came in a terrible situation under Gerrard with it just lost 4-0, and he's just changed the club. And he will obviously, Villa have the money. They have some good players. We've talked about their midfield all year. He improves players. They're going to attract big players, especially like obviously he's worked in Spain and places like that. He's won the most Europa Leagues ever. So I would fully expect them. They have to be. I know I haven't seen all the teams that are in the Conference League, but I would say they're favourites, especially going off that point Owen made. West Ham's in the final, and this Villa side is far better than that West Ham side. So I think they're going to keep all their players. Watkins is flying since he came in. Seen he got 15 goals, which is like the first time since for Villa a striker's got over 15 goals since Benteke. So for me, Villa will recruit well. They have money, and Emery came there. He came there. We were like, I was surprised he went there because they were in a terrible situation, 16th in the table. He must have got promises that we will invest in the summer. He obviously seen a good enough side there, but I think they will improve, and I think next season they will be dangerous. I think we've been saying that for a few weeks as well, because he came in a terrible situation and he's made them unbelievable. So give him a summer, give him a transfer window, a bit of money. He could take the side to top 6, top 4. I think anyway.
Yeah, look, it's definitely going to be Villa's definitely going to be a club that we're going to have to look at next season, very much in depth, because I agree, Connor. I do think they're going to be a serious side going forward if they can manage to keep a hold of Emery, of course. But moving on then, lads, that's the European spots confirmed, done. Look, just quickly on some of the sides that did miss out, and that I'm thinking particularly had a good season. Just want to get a quick comment from his lads. Looking at the likes of Brentford and Fulham here, just narrowly missed out. But Warren, do you think those sides are going to be promising in the Premier League next year, or do you think that's very much the ceiling that those clubs can get to?
I think if this season showed us anything, it's not to write off any team. I wouldn't be surprised if Brentford are up sniffing around them places again. I would be wary about Fulham, to be honest. But I think Chelsea and that's going to get stronger and all next year too. However, and I know it's just looking at it off the basis of it, but I think it is going to be quite a weak Premier League next year, looking at the teams that's in it, with the teams that have got promoted and those who went down. So I think there's going to be a bit more competitiveness for places. However, I think it might be a bit easier to predict the bottom half of the table rather than the top half next season.
Yeah, look, I think that's fair enough. And Connor, then, just same question to yourself, looking at the likes of Spurs, Brentford, Fulham, they just narrowly missed out. But what are you expecting from those kinds of sides next season?
Well, I have to give credit to Brentford because they had an unbelievable season. I've seen they had the best record against the top 6. They beat like Liverpool, they beat United, they beat City twice. I know it was the last day of the season, but they did go to the Etihad and beat them as well. So I would expect Brentford to continue their rise. Obviously, they're going to be missing Tony. And Mbeumo has been brilliant since, and Wiesa as well. They've been brilliant, to be fair, in his absence. And they have a really, really good manager. And I can see them staying top 10. It is going to be very difficult, though, to get top 6. We're speaking about all these teams like Aston Villa, Brighton, obviously Liverpool, Chelsea, teams like that. I would worry for Spurs. They haven't even got a manager in yet. They're going to lose Keane. I think they're really going to struggle next year. I think their backline is dreadful. They're going to have to get a goalkeeper in. Spurs could be looking lower. They probably will get top 10, but it could be a 9th or 10th finish for me. And then for Fulham, yeah, they've definitely overachieved this year. Brilliant, as we've said previous weeks. In that previous podcast we give them so much, attention as well, and like some of the Willian and Reid and Polina and all them players. So for Fulham, it will be difficult to get top 10 next season, but they have a good manager in there, Silva, who I didn't think was a great manager, but he's proven me wrong. He said at the start of the year they were one of the favourites to go down. So for Fulham, I think they would be the team I would be worried about the most next season. I think they'll stay up, but I think they might drop off because I think they've severely overachieved this year.
Yeah, look, I think, again, very interesting, and we will definitely on the podcast be keeping an eye on that then during our coverage of the Premier League. So, lads, then moving on to the relegated sides, obviously a very, very exciting last day of the season down at the bottom of the table. Mincy's Everton just narrowly missing out on relegation. I have to say, a wonderful goal from Doucouré. So I think we'll just start with Everton, lads. Doucouré managing to keep them in the Premier League. wonder strike. The scenes at the end of the game, the fans rushing on to Goodison. They've stayed in the Premier League for another year. Or an overall analysis of this season for Everton, and where are they going next year?
Look, it was brilliant from Decore, and I think he's really stepped up in the last few weeks for Everton. When it's mattered. I think it will be different next season. To be honest, I think a full season under Sean Dyche will be different. It depends who he gets in. But for me, and he's making agree. I think Everton should be at the absolute least middle of the table. I don't think they should be anywhere near the relegation zone, and I know it's been the case for the last 3 years or so that they've been towards the bottom, but I think they're really, really underachieving, especially with some of the players they've got. And I know he wasn't great this season; he was always injured. But about 2 seasons ago, they were saying Dominic Calvert-Lewin was a £70 million striker. They had Richarlison, who they sold for £70 or £60 million. Like, if these players are so good, why are they battling relegation every year? I think that they need to reevaluate really this summer. But I do think Sean Dyche will have them back in the middle of the table. I think even just as I said on the last point, that with the quality of competition that there might be in the Premier League next year, I think there's going to be worse teams than Everton. So I don't think they will be near the relegation zone. But they can't just rely on the last day of the season anymore, because Everton's a massive, massive club with huge history, and they should really, really be further up the table than they are.
Yeah, look, I actually do agree with you, to be honest, Oren. I do think they have a good squad. I think their squad was, better than, the sides that ultimately did go down, just in terms of performance levels and even just desire to stay up. I think Everton did show that on especially on the final day of the season there. It was a real war in that game. But Connor, in all seriousness, look, the players come out after the game, very, very open, very honest interviews, saying that mentality hadn't been there all year, but that that the club didn't need to be where it was. It shouldn't be where it is. Even amidst the celebrations of staying up, there was still the chance of sack the board. Look, it's obvious the club is going to be in for some massive change this summer, and there is going to be maybe changes right from the top all the way down to the bottom at Everton Football Club. So, look, realistically, as Oren says, they should be up around the middle of the table. What's your analysis on it then? Look, giving them a good summer transfer window, Dyche, let's say he gets all the targets in that he wants to get. Where is the best that Everton can do then for next season?
As you were saying there about the board and all that, there needs to be changes within the club. I would worry for Everton next year. There's all this financial stuff going on, and there's talk maybe of deducted points. Obviously, if they have a good summer and Dyche is in there, like we've seen his experience in the Premier League, I think they would stay up again. But I think we've seen with the celebrations as well. Last year was a bit more like relief. This year is a bit more, just annoyance. They shouldn't be in this position. They shouldn't be going down to the last day of the season needing a win. I think they got lucky enough. Like, I know the game was brutal. Let's be honest. It was horrible. Even Sean Dyche came out after the game and said a hideous game. They were lucky they played Bournemouth last game because Bournemouth were on the beach. They won 6 or 8 wins were at home, so the crowd is huge for them. It's crazy to think that Brighton win basically kept them up. That 5-1 kept them up. Yeah. So for Everton, it's been an absolutely shambolic season. You could say, as you said, the players at the end, they were probably as surprised as anyone that stayed up because their mentality was in the bin. Connor Cody was coming out after, and people like Pickford and all that were just happy to stay up. Obviously, if they have a good season with the standard coming up, they probably will stay up again. But for Everton, that's just not good enough. This is their 70th straight season in the top flight. They should be doing better. They obviously have the history of the new stadium coming. I can see Everton being in a situation like this again next season, to be honest. I know Dyche he's going to get a summer and he's going to get players in, but I do worry for Everton. And if they don't make changes to the board, I think relegation could be another possibility next year.
Well, look, it is definitely one of those. Look, Everton's a very famous club, very big club, and I agree with both of his lads. I think part of me, that like the optimistic side of me is looking at it going, look, I think Everton's going to be all right. But then, like the realistic side of me is saying, well, that is 2 years in a row now that they've really taken it down to the end of the season to confirm their Premier League status. So look, I do think it's going to be a big summer of change for Everton, right the way from the board to players. I think it is going to be a big summer for Everton, but I am just hopeful that they will get it right, and I am hopeful that next season they will be in and around the middle of the table and well away from that relegation zone, to be honest. But we will keep our eyes on it. So the three sides that were relegated, lads: Southampton, Leicester, Leeds. Tumultuous seasons for those three clubs, to say the least. I think we'll start with Leeds, lads. Oren, look, obviously on this podcast, we have been quite critical of Leeds at big periods during this season. And ultimately now they have been relegated to the Championship. They have a lot of players on their roster currently, Oren, that you would still say would maybe have some sort of a future in the Premier League. So who do you expect, really? Who are the big guys that you think are going to leave Leeds then in the summer, and where does that leave them then next season?
Well, to be honest, Connor, I think Leeds have a championship quality team. There is a few exceptions, but I did see that Brendan Aronson and Jack Harrison both had release clauses implemented into a contract if they were to get relegated, and both of them will move on. Jack Harrison will probably go back to the Premier League. I could see him end up at like a Leicester or something. And then Brendan Aronson, I know he wasn't unbelievable this season, but I can see him ending up in Europe at least anyway. I think really Nanto should be leaving. I've seen this morning Arsenal and Man City are being linked with him for a £20 million move. And the only other one I would probably take out of that Leeds squad, or I would probably say would leave that Leeds squad that isn't really championship quality, is the right back Christensen. I know you can look at the likes of Somerville and Sinistera, who will probably get moves, but whether else to the Premier League or not, who knows? Look, Leeds are in a bad position. Leeds are a huge club. From a personal standpoint, being a United fan, I was glad to see them go down. I'm not going to say I wasn't, but I think they might even struggle in the Championship next season. I don't think it's going to be a straight bounce back for Leeds. Like we've seen how long it took them to get back to the Premier League after they were relegated from the First Division. So I don't think it'll be as straightforward for Leeds fans as they might think it is.
Yeah, look, I do agree with you, Warren. I think they're going to struggle next season as well. I think they're going to lose a lot of that core of that squad, and really what they need to do is invest for being in the Championship rather than looking at a bounce straight back up. Connor, I think the thing you would say with the three sides that have been relegated is really bad boards, really bad miscommunication between boards and management, and even playing staff or players and coaching staff. Leeds, no exception to this rule. They've had a lot of trouble off the pitch this season. Just as much as they have had on the pitch. So, really, looking at a club like Leeds, then Connor, would you say something similar to Everton, that the things really need to change at that football club?
Yeah, definitely. I see the Leeds fans were singing the same there, sack the board. Recruitment this year was terrible. They lost Rafinha and they lost Phillips, and they spent pretty poorly in the summer. Just a terrible season. Defensively, they just didn't invest, and one of the worst defense in the league, conceding goals. I think they conceded like 75 goals. And even that goal at the end by Lucas Moura, that made him look like Messi. It was just disgusting. He just walked through their whole team. They just gave up on the last day. I think they basically knew they were down. They're 9 points away from home all season. Allardyce has just came out and said, basically, they tried, but the squad just isn't good enough. I think in the Championship next year, it's tough down there. And I seen the Championship, it's one of the strongest looking championships I've seen in years. And we already know how hard it is anyway. So, they're going to have to change the board. They're going to have to invest money. They're going to lose players, as Oren has said. And I think Leeds will struggle next year. And I could see them, being in the Championship for a few years.
Yeah, look, I do agree with you, lads. I think Leeds are really, really going to struggle. I think Leeds fans who think that they're going to bounce straight back up to the Premier League, I think are in for really a big shock, because I don't think the squad's good enough to come straight back up either. Well, moving on then, lads, to Leicester. Obviously, this has to be one of the strangest relegations that we've seen from the Premier League. It was only 2 years ago that they were winning an FA Cup, and even then, it was only 7 years ago that they won the Premier League. So, really, really strange relegation. And you would have to say, in terms of players that are in that squad, has to be one of the strongest squads to ever be relegated from the Premier League. So coming to you first, Oren, look, one thing we've said about Leicester all season is a number of their top performers just haven't turned up this season. And I asked Connor the question a couple of weeks ago, did he think any of them still had a Premier League future? I'm going to ask you the same thing, Oren. When you look at that squad, is anybody really going to take a punt on the likes of, say, Ndidi, the likes of Johnny Evans, Jamie Vardy, or are these guys very much resigned to Championship football now?
No, I personally, I would say the three names you've just mentioned should be playing in the Premier League next year. Look, it wouldn't surprise me if Johnny Evans stayed at Leicester because he is their club captain. But I think Johnny Evans is a really good defender, and I think they really, really missed him all season due to his injury. So I would be surprised if a club didn't pick up Johnny Evans, because he does have that effect, like Craig Dawson did when he went to Wolves, or even when he went to West Ham a couple of years ago. So I would be surprised if somebody doesn't pick him up, because he'd be cheap or maybe even free. Jamie Vardy would be cheaper, even free, and as a backup option. Like we've seen in the last few weeks, Vardy started to look at a bit of himself, but still a shadow of his best performances. Don't get me wrong. He has missed a step, but it wouldn't surprise me if even a big club went for Jamie Vardy as a backup option. But I think Everton should really be looking at the likes of Jamie Vardy as a backup option, because even though he is a bit older, he's got that experience in the Premier League, and for the most part, he is available. I think Iheanacho gets a move as well, maybe to the likes of Crystal Palace or whatever. And who was the other one you mentioned? Sorry, Ndidi.
Ndidi, yes.
To be honest, I've said it before. I think the likes of Man United or Liverpool or somebody should be signing Ndidi, because we've seen how talented he is. I know maybe the past 2 years, but I would say obviously the last year he hasn't been great. He hasn't been to the standards that we've been expecting, because this is a fella who 3 or 4 years ago people were saying £80 million, that's how much he would go for or whatever. But I think at the price that you could get him at, which is going to be fairly low considering the relegation, I think it would be stupid not to, especially for one of the big clubs who isn't going to expect him to be a starter, but maybe an understudy to their starting centre defensive mid. Look, a bad season for Leicester, coming off the back of finishing 8th last season, and obviously all the successes you already mentioned. And it is quite a shame to see, considering, like we've been talking about the board and the owners and stuff, considering what happened at Leicester and stuff, it is quite a shame to see the how disjointed the fans are with the board now, considering they were so close at a point in time. But yeah, Leicester, it'll be a rebuild for them, because they are going to lose the majority of their team, I would say. And I think they like Leeds, it mightn't be a straight back bounce up. They need to invest for the championship, like you say. Yeah, it'll be difficult for them, and it is sad to see, to be honest.
Yeah, agreed, lad. It is very sad to see Leicester go. You'd really grown accustomed to seeing Leicester in the Premier League, and they had built some wonderful sides that did some wonderful things in their time in the Premier League. Connor, look, Owen's touched on it, obviously. Very, very difficult few seasons for Leicester. Obviously, their owner died, unfortunately, and there has been a lot of dissent within the fan base towards the current ownership. The squad's going to be stripped bare now. A lot of these players are going to be moving on. So look, again, similar sort of question to Leeds. Are Leicester able to bounce straight back up next season, or is this going to be a similar situation to Leeds, where they maybe need to spend a couple of years in the Championship and really rebuild from scratch?
Yeah, I think they're going to lose even more players than Leeds, as we said all year. This is a really strong squad. This is a team that in their previous 5 seasons had finished in the top 10 in the Premier League, nearly got Champions League a few of those years, and won an FA Cup. Players like Maddison, Barnes, Iheanacho, I think will go. Tielemans is gone. They're going to really, really struggle. I think Johnny Evans might stay. He is a bit older now. I know a team might take a punt on him, but he's just a bit injury prone. But 7 years after winning the Premier League, to be in this position is crazy. They're going to have to invest, obviously, as well. It's just going to be really difficult for them. And the championship, as I keep saying, is like it is one of the most difficult leagues to get out of. It's one of them ones where like if they could get out first time, maybe, because I think they would. If they can't get out first time, I think they could be there for a while. And it's their own fault, really. That like they got your boy Smith in, and he got 9 points from 8 games, which just isn't good enough. The points total this year wasn't that high to stay up. What was it, 36 or something Everton stayed up with? So there was a good chance of staying up. For Leicester, I do think next year, I don't see them bouncing back. I think actually I would give Leeds more of a chance, because I think unless like Vardy stays, Evans stays and stays fit, it's going to be one of them ones, Danny Ward and Nets. It's just they're going to really, really, really struggle next year.
Yeah, I do agree with you. I do agree with you. And look, lads, we a couple of weeks ago we did cover Southampton whenever their relegation was confirmed. So I'll just get a quick comment from you. Look, obviously, Oren, really not the season that I'm sure Southampton expected to have. And really, what you would say is Southampton's board, the mismanagement, really, especially even we look at the appointment of Nathan Jones. There's 8 losses on the bounce that you looked at, and you sort of think, maybe if there had been a better manager in there, they maybe might have just stayed up. But really, Oren, just a quick comment from you. Southampton, similar situation to Leeds and Leicester?
Yeah, it has to be. It's as Connor literally just said, the Championship is one of the most difficult leagues in the world. It is so competitive. Like, even if you look at it this year, Sunderland getting to the playoffs, nobody would have expected that at the start of the season. This was a team that many were expecting to fight relegation or get middle of the table, but certainly not getting to the playoffs. And even the likes of Luton and Coventry, if you would have said at the start of the season the Coventry said he was going to be in the playoff final, the odds on that would have been ridiculous. Take me to the bookies. But no, it's going to be different. It's going to be difficult for Southampton, because again, they're going to lose a lot of players. They invested heavily in January, and they're going to lose a lot of players. And I don't know much about this new manager that's coming in, to be honest. So I can't say much about him. But yeah, Championship's very, very difficult. And as Connor literally just said, unless these teams bounce back up straight away, they could be in the Championship for a long, long while.
Yeah, agreed, lad, agreed. And Connor, really, look, the thing you would say about Southampton is, their only real saving grace is that they did sign young players, and there is that ability for those young players then to go to the Championship and really grow. So, maybe not next year, but in the following seasons, if the development and the growth is right and they get the right manager in, you would say that Southampton are maybe in a better place than Leeds and Leicester in terms of that sort of, the growth in the squad.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I actually think they would have the best chance of bouncing back just through the youth. And I think they have a better chance of holding on to a lot of their players, because obviously Ward Prowse will probably go, but I think boys like Walcott, or even like them, that Armstrong, 2 Armstrongs, I think they will keep them kind of players, because I don't think a lot of Premier League teams would be looking them. Obviously Southampton's had a horrible year. I've seen that, like 25 losses. They didn't win in their last 13 games, which was like their worst record since like 1980s. Just a horrible, horrible year. As you said, that like Nathan Jones, what a terrible appointment. They got this new guy in, Saleh. He done okay for a few weeks, but as I said, they didn't win any of their last 13. So they're obviously going to have no confidence, but they have young players. They're obviously going to lose your boy Lavia and boys like that are really top players, but they've invested a few players. They got that striker in who done well in the last game of the season. I think he might stay. I think a few of them guys might stay. So I think Southampton out of the 3 have the best chance of bouncing back, which is crazy to think because they came last. But I think they'll hold on to a lot of the core of their team.
Yeah, agreed. And again, Southampton, they're going to be a club next season that I think people just need to keep their eye on, especially with all that young talent. That there is the potential there to possibly bounce straight back up and to build a good squad for the Premier League in years to come. Well, lads, that'll do it for the Premier League coverage. That's 2022-2023 wrapped up in the Premier League. Man City champions, European spots confirmed, relegations confirmed. We have Luton, Sheffield United and Burnley going to be joining us next season. So we're looking forward to seeing what they can produce next year. But to cap this episode off, lads, it's our last ever, for this season, our last picks of the week. So Connor, in the game week 38, who was your player of the week?
So I'm going to give it to Harry Kane. I know Leeds are brutal, but he did score 2 goals and got an assist. He was brilliant throughout the game. Brilliant season, 30 goals this year. So He deserves it. I seen he was the only player. He's got over 30 goals in 2 seasons, and neither of them years he's won the Golden Boot. So he deserves a bit of love. So, and he played brilliantly. So I'm going to give it to Harry Kane.
Yeah, definitely, lad. Definitely, Kane. One of those special players, and hopefully he will be playing in the red of Manchester next year. My overall fantasy pick for the season, lads, the most fantasy points ever scored by a player in a fantasy season. Can you guess who it is?
Early.
Yeah, it has to be Erling Haaland. The most points by a single player ever recorded in fantasy. Obviously, phenomenal season for him. Ridiculous amount of goals scored. Really, Connor, the question I just want to ask you on Haaland, and I just want to float this out to you to get your opinion on it. Look, it did take him a while to settle in, and he was still scoring goals. City have obviously found the way to play with him now.
Yeah.
How many goals do you reckon Haaland's going to get now moving forward?
That's a great question because it creates so much for him. I think 40 goals is a realistic possibility if he stays fit and he plays every game, because he didn't even play every game this season. So 40 goals. Like, you look at Harry Kane there, like if Harry Kane was on that side, I think he would score 35 plus goals as well. Like, he scored 30 goals in a brutal Tottenham team.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, Haaland has to be looking at 40. Like, he'll try and beat that record. He has that edge in him as well. And City just keep getting better and better. So, I think next year people might say, oh, teams will be, more suited to him and they'll try and play him a certain way. But like, we've seen it even in big games, he scores a lot of goals. And some of the teams that are coming up, like Burnley and Luton and Sheffield United, like, good luck to them, because he will have a field day. Let's be honest.
Yeah, agreed. And look, Connor, I seen a stat the other day. I think it was Henry had 44 goal involvements in his greatest ever Premier League season, and Haaland finished up this season with 44 goal involvements in the Premier League. Really, it is just freakish numbers, isn't it?
Oh, it is crazy. Even as I alluded to previous podcast, like, he had like 25, 26 big misses as well. In that City team, he does get a lot of chances, but you have to give it to him as well, because he's always seems to be in the right position at the right time, and might not score them all, but he's there, and he what a player. And as you said, he deservedly, he was Young Player of the Year, now you're Fantasy Player of the Year. So what a player, what a season. And the best of it is, I think he can get even better.
Yeah,
he's so young, like, he's going to get better.
Agreed. I think when Pep finally, gets him to be the link player that he wants him to be, it's going to be ridiculous to see how good he's going to become. And Oren, you're finishing us off for the season. What is your opinion?
My last opinion of the week, my last opinion of the season is going to be about Spurs yet again. I was actually speaking to your brother this morning, Connor. He was texting me this morning, asking me about Ange Postecoglou, and what I thought about the prospect of him going to Tottenham Hotspur. And that's what my opinion is going to be. My opinion is that if Spurs appoint Ange Postecoglou, they could get top 4 next season.
Very interesting one. Funny, he was talking to me about it as well. Look, I think the one thing we can say about Postecoglou, lads, is that obviously he plays excellent football. But it will be interesting if he does go to Spurs. Obviously, there is that jump between Scottish and English football. There is a massive gap between the two. Obviously, he has managed the best team in Scotland, has had the best financial resources of a team in Scotland. And he's going to go, could possibly be going to Spurs where, they notoriously don't spend massive amounts of money. But with the current crop of players that they have there, I think it's definitely an interesting prospect. Connor, I want to get your opinion on this too.
Yeah, I just don't see it, to be honest, lads. I just can't see Spurs getting top 4 next year, no matter who they bring in, because they're not going to invest. And I know he's done well at Celtic, and he is a good manager, but he's going to be under severe pressure. And I just don't see top 4, especially going to lose Kane. Son's going to really have to step up. Richarlison's going to have to start playing football. Their backline's brutal. Who's he going to get in? Is he going to bring, your boy Vickers from Celtic? Bring him back to Spurs. I just don't see them. I think obviously the teams around them are improving as well, like even Brighton and Villa. I think Spurs would be very lucky to even get top 6. Even with
I'm going to change that opinion, to be honest, because top 4 is quite a stretch. What I meant to say was like I was talking to Ashleen about it this morning, he was asking about Luis Enrique in comparison to Ange Postecoglou, and I think there's more chance of getting European football with Ange than they do with Luis Enrique.
It's definitely a tough one. I mean, Enrique hasn't managed in club football since I think it's like 2017 or maybe it is 2017. He hasn't managed in club football, so I said it would definitely be difficult for him to step back into club football. But the only thing is, I think in terms of actual manager, I think
Yeah.
Enrique is levels above Postecoglou.
What he's done as well in football.
I agree.
Level
I
above.
agree. But I mean, for Tottenham Hotspur, who really need a fella to go in and kind of steady the ship again, because it looks like it's turmoil over at Tottenham Hotspur, and the football that Ange plays is very much similar to the style of Tottenham. Like it is quite press heavy and then hitting the counter attack, and with their wing backs and fullbacks heavily involved. So I think just from I'm not saying Ange is a better manager or has had a better career than Luis Enrique, but I think to fit Spurs' style and fit their mould, and he doesn't really take shit, Ange. So I think for Spurs, I think Ange would be a better fit.
Mm-hmm.
See, that
Spurs
could
have
be a
went for
problem
big manager
too.
name for years and years since Poch was second. It hasn't worked for them, so why not take a punt on Ange?
I know you're saying he doesn't take shit, but look at Conte. He doesn't take shit. He came out against the players and he left. So
But
that's what
he's
worried me too.
hot-headed, lad. He's hot-headed.
I know, but Ange, I could see them turning on him so quickly. He's not a good man manager. Like that's what I'm like kind of hearing off, Owen and stuff like that. So that would worry me as well. It could be a quick sacking. Like it could be really, really swift. It could be like he's not doing well for us. He's not, and I've seen him in interviews as well. He is hot. He can be, he's not the nicest guy either. Like he can just turn on people too. I've seen it with him and Celtic. People asking questions and he like looks at them as if they're stupid. I've seen that before too. So I would worry for him if he goes into and he's like about fifth choice. Let's be honest, they've got rejected by so many managers so far. Now I could be proven wrong. He hasn't got a track record in the Premier League, so that's the thing as well. I thought they would have went for like a Rodgers who's a bit more experienced. Who I know Rodgers did get them or Leicester into relegation trouble, but he wasn't backed and he got them fifth place 2 years in a row and won them an FA Cup. So I thought they would have went with more experience, but we'll just have to see with Ange.
Yeah, it is. That manager saga for Spurs is going to be very interesting over the summer, and it is going to be interesting to see who they end up with. I think when you see who they end up with, you can sort of judge what kind of season Spurs are going to have. But look, I am in agreement with you, Oren. I do think Ange might be a better fit for Spurs than Enrique. Now, by all means, I agree with you. I'm not saying that Ange is a better manager than Enrique, but I think maybe just for the fit and for the style of play that Spurs are aiming, I think maybe Ange is the better fit. But at the same time, I do agree with you, Connor. I could also see the Spurs players just down in tools because they don't really like to be criticised, as we've already seen at numerous points this season. But look, guys, that's going to do it. That is the final Premier League episode of 2022-2023 from the Bottom Bins podcast. As always, you can find us on the Parlay Sports app. That's PRLY Sports on the Apple App Store. Our Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok handle is at bottombinspod. If you want to jump over and give us a follow on those platforms, there's plenty of upcoming content. And as for the summer, guys, we're going to continue. We're going to have more transfer episodes over the summer where we'll do one a week, kind of wrapping up the biggest deals and looking at who suits what clubs, potential transfers, potential management options as well for clubs. We're also going to be doing a new series over the summer where we take clubs individually and we try and fix them, so to speak, as well as keeping up with our top 15 or top 12 lists, whatever it might be that week. So as always, thank you very much for listening to the Bottom Bins podcast. Thank you very much for all your support this season. Yeah. We've thoroughly enjoyed making this Premier League content for you. And as always, keep it bottom bins.
Keep it bottom bins.
Keep it bottom bins.